And I guess without further ado, I'm going to hand the baton to you guys if you're queued up, because this is, I think, this is part 2. You were here in November. So, have at it, Jim and Josh.
So again, I am the town's code compliance coordinator. Today we're going to be taking a look at and talking about the New York State Uniform Code and the implementation of that code into the town of Webster's municipal code. So our goals tonight, we're going to be looking at what does the Uniform Code consist of, its mandatory enforcement within the state, implementation statistics throughout Monroe County, our proposed code layout, and then implementation timeline. The Uniform Code is a collection of books that are, code books that are created by the International Code Council and adopted by New York State Department of State. On here it shows you a very easy to read graph. It says the Uniform Code, which is also referred to as the New York State Uniform Fire and Prevention Building Code. And within that are the books that I'm going to list off now. The Residential Building Code, the Building Code, the Fire Code, the Plumbing Code, the Fuel Gas Code, the Mechanical Code, the Existing Building Code, the Property Maintenance Code, and the Energy Conservation and Construction Code. So all of those, that family of code books is the Uniform Code. And now, unfortunately, I'm going to do some reading, and it's going to essentially speak for itself on the importance and why we need to implement this into the town. By looking up in the top right corner, the blue square, this is part of New York State 102.8. The title is Under Laws and Regulations, and number 2 of that section says, pursuant to section 379.3 of the executive law, no city, town, village, county, or other municipality shall have the power to supersede, void, repeal, or make less restrictive any provisions of the Uniform Code. So that's all of those books that I just listed off. Actually, as representation, we brought all the books too, so that the board could see visual representation of what that actually looks like. It's pretty thick. New York 101 is the title of the Property Maintenance Code. The reason why I'm using the Property Maintenance Code is since we were kind of looking at it tonight, but this is also included in all of those books. It just has the only difference in the wording is where it says Property Maintenance Code, it says whatever the book title is. It says this publication shall be known as the 2020 edition of the Property Maintenance Code of New York State, hereinafter referred to as this code. This code is part of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, or the Uniform Code. 103.1, Administration and Enforcement, says the Uniform Code shall be administered and enforced by the authority having jurisdiction. The identity of the authority having jurisdiction is given in any given situation is determined in accordance with Article 18 of the Executive Law and the regulations promulgated by the Secretary of State pursuant to the Executive Law Section 381.1. In general, the authority having jurisdiction is the local government, city, town, village, in which the building or structure is located. In our case, that would be the town of Webster, and myself, and the building department, and the fire marshal. So 103.1, where a city, town, or village, or county of the authority having jurisdiction, such city, town, or village, or county shall provide for the administration and enforcement of the Uniform Code, Energy Code, by local laws, ordinances, or other appropriate regulations, or a combination of both. So basically what this is saying is you can choose to put municipal law, or other codes into the municipal law to back up these codes, but whether you choose to do so or not, we do need to enforce them. This is another continuation of the last slide. This is from a legal memorandum that was issued back in April of 2021. What elected officials need to know. And A says the Uniform Code, or its title is the Uniform Code. An individual city, town, village is not required to adopt the Uniform Code or take any other affirmative steps to make the Uniform Code effective within the municipality. The Uniform Code is automatically in effect in each city, town, or village in the state, except for New York City, by directive of the state legislature. An individual city, town, or village cannot choose to exclude itself from all or any parts of the Uniform Code. So that's basically backing up what I just said. Whether we choose to adapt it into our municipal law or not, we have got to enforce it. We don't have a choice. Article 18, Section 371, Statement of Legislative Findings and Purpose, which is in the top right blue square of the screen. Number 5 says provide protection to both residential and non-residential buildings and ensure that the Uniform Code to be in full force and effect in every area of the state. encourage local governments to exercise their full powers to administer and enforce the Uniform Code and provide for a uniform statewide approach for the training and qualification of personnel engaged in the administration and enforcement of the Uniform Code. And then going back down to B there, which is part of the legal memorandum again. This is just an excerpt of B of the administration and enforcement of the Uniform Code. The Uniform Code is typically enforced by the local level or by each local government. Again, just highlighting that the township is responsible for enforcing these books. So these are the implementation statistics of Monroe County. This is obviously isn't all the towns and city in the county, but this is a good number of them. And on here I made a little graph so you can see the number of mentions of the Uniform Code in other municipalities. Brighton, Gates, Greece, Henrietta, Irondequoit, Parma, Penfield, Pittsburgh, and Rochester. And I think the most that was mentioned was 20 times, and that was in Pittsburgh in their Chapter 64 Building Construction and Maintenance. The town of Webster has it mentioned once or twice. We have it once in the fire prevention code, and I think maybe in the building section. I haven't found it, but I think so what is the purpose of this presentation? Why am I up here sitting and using my mouth? If New York State requires mandatory enforcement of the Uniform Code, whether it's adopted into municipal law or not, what is the purpose of my presentation? Well, the Town of Webster Municipal Code is currently without a property maintenance chapter. Although it's possible to cite violations out of the New York State Property Maintenance Code, which is that small purple book on the top, very top. I can cite things out of that, violations of that code, but without it adopted into municipal law, it creates some issues. The Town of Webster Property Maintenance Chapter would outline and enforce certain roles, enforcement roles, proper procedure, due process, actions in case of noncompliance, and penalties for offenses. So without this chapter, egregious noncompliant cases that are brought to court would not be able to be, we wouldn't have to find penalties for those actual violations. So myself and Josh came up with a brief code layout that we think we should go into a draft for our town municipal law for the property maintenance chapter. And on there it's just a general provision section. It essentially looks like every other code section, or I'm sorry, chapter within our municipal law. It has to have a general provisions, there's regulatory provisions, and then there's enforcement and compliance. It looks a lot like the fire, those three articles look a lot like the fire prevention chapter. But within those, the contents are specific to property maintenance. The other thing that is important to note is that property maintenance isn't just exterior maintenance. It's not just grass. It's not just peeling paint. This is things that are inside. These are structural members from inside the building that's already built, that's been starting to wear down, whether it's commercial or residential. It's about bathrooms and heating equipment and a lot of other things other than just grass and peeling paint or garbage left outside. So our proposed timeline would be March. We'd like to draft and develop a property maintenance chapter for public review. So I showed you briefly this. We have started already going through and actually putting all the verbiage into each one of those sections. And then we would do an internal town legal review through our legal department, town attorney and deputy town attorneys. In April, we'd like to release a drafted chapter for public review, and then we would propose a public hearing at April 20th, 2023 town board meeting, and then in May, we bring before the town board for a formal vote on May 4th at the town board meeting. And that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Councilman.
So, under interior property maintenance, okay, how do you propose getting into someone's house to do an inspection of their structural members, ceilings, walls, floors, etc.?
It's a great question. So it only applies to what I can see, right? So I don't have any right to go in anyone's house without being invited. A lot of times that I get involved with that when I go into commercial properties, or if I go into a residential property that's being rented out by a tenant, will call me and say, there's a problem within my house, can you come take a look at it?
Even though the tenant is not the owner, you can enter the house with the tenant's permission. Okay. Exterior issues. Can you walk onto someone's property to their backyard if you have a complaint from a neighbor that there's all sorts of refuse in their backyard?
It's a great question. So everyone is entitled to the Fourth Amendment right, which is the right to privacy. So no, the answer to your question is no, I can't walk onto someone's property. I can view it from a neighboring property if I'm given permission by the neighbor. And that's usually how I'm able to see these violations.
Okay.
Generally speaking, the protections that are afforded all citizens under I believe it's the Fourth Amendment would apply to the town official, even in a matter of this focus, which is really not criminal in nature.
My questions were the same as Councilman Cahill.
Jenny? Any?
Great presentations.
I had a leg up on this because I got the, to see this presentation a day or two ago, or just exactly, so I already know the answer to this. That when I saw the code layout and, our 3 articles and 15 different subsections, I'd asked Jim and Josh, when you populate that with your draft, how many pages is that going to be? I think they said like 20.
Upper 20s, I think is what it is.
So that, in essence, when you get to your implementation of the town code, you'll draft and develop this code, so it'll be 20, 25 pages. That's the one you'll hand over to get legal review.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And with that, ultimately, once it goes through legal review, would that be what we would be publishing in the newspaper and online in advance of the public hearing?
Well, can I jump in on this?
That's a legal question, yes. I said legal question.
Well, no, this is actually more of a process question, because in the past, what we've done is when a law's been proposed, we have a workshop session. So it would not be published until the town board had a chance to look at it and then make any revisions or amendments.
Okay.
And then once it did pass that, then then it would be published as a proposed law.
And then there will be a public hearing.
Yes, it would be published for the purpose of the public hearing. So, based on the timeline Josh and Jim provided, I guess, what is it, Dolly, it's 5 to 10 days? All right. So, yeah, so it would be the week before that. So we'd have to have this thing done, probably a workshop, I guess ideally, workshop would be the last workshop in March, and if it needed to be first workshop in April, would be the last time it would be looked at and maybe tweaked. So then I mean, to keep on the timeline, then that's when.
Yeah.
If you want to publish.
Yeah. Okay. That's all really I had. Because I'm jonesing to see that 25 pages. I mean, John, some of the questions you just had, which are almost more 10,000 feet above, I bet you'll have a lot more questions once you see that 25 pages.
No,
I will.
no.
You will. You should. I'm counting it.
I'll do what I can do to.
Anything else? Because we'll talk about how do we get the workshop into that times. Because I like that. To have the board.
The other thing I think we need to discuss just very briefly is that I will be very interested to see the procedures in which, how these things are handled. Because I think it's important for the public to know that we're not looking to come down with an iron fist on this. There will be an opportunity for them, probably at least 3 or 4 times, to be noticed that there was a violation and an opportunity to make that right. And there will be several notices. And we're not going to send you out in a car taking video of every single property. But these are things that our residents do complain to us about very often, because they feel a little helpless when they live next door to some of these. Let's face it, many of them are zombie properties. And I know that I have talked with many residents telling them that there already is a process on our website where you can fill in a complaint. Unfortunately, it's under abandoned homes, and then they say, but it's not abandoned, there's somebody living there. I was like, yes, I know, but there's still a little box in there where you can fill this out. So, and I always guarantee that there's anonymity with that, we're not gonna blow them in, let them know who complained. But, you know, people are concerned with some of the properties.
It'll be all documented when you fill in the 20 pages, correct, your process?
Yeah, actually, in Article 3, that's laid out. Actions in case of non-compliance.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.